Hi, I'm Thomas Bowles, Prince William County Agricultural Extension Agent. Welcome to our video.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Berlin, Natural Resource Specialist with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to be talking about native trees and shrubs for the suburban landscape. Glad you could join us today. First thing I want to cover is making sure that the selection of the tree or shrub that you have in mind is appropriate for the spot. This is an example of one that is not appropriate. It's eating the house. I think it's a holly. And it's a beautiful tree, but it's way too close to the house. So look at the mature size of the tree or shrub and then make sure that it is appropriate for the space that you have. And how much maintenance do you need? If you are always pruning a tree or shrub to get in your front door or to open your car door, that's going to stress the shrub or tree over time. And so a better choice could be made so that you don't have to be maintaining it so extensively. What variety do you want? Do you want something that is evergreen or spring flowering, summer flowering? It can provide the bones of a landscape. Winter trees are a beautiful addition, I think, to the winter landscape, and it can provide that structure that makes for a lovely landscape. What texture, color, or structure do you want? And I'm going to be dealing with ecosystem services, and if that's an unfamiliar term to you, it's what the tree or shrub can provide for native insects that are so critically important, beneficial insects, pollinators, predators of some of the pests, squirrels and songbirds, all the things that a tree or shrub can provide to a landscape that is also an ecosystem. So here's some thoughts for how to choose just the right plant. Consider the site, how sunny or shady it is, the exposure. Is it windy? Does it have a microclimate because it's up against the house? What the soil quality is and pH. Some trees and shrubs need a more acidic soil. Is the soil compacted or is there construction planned nearby? What's the goal for the plant? Spring color, 4 seasons of interest, habitat. Consider what are the surrounding plants and the plant community. More on that a little bit later. And what are your expectations? Can you wait for something to grow slowly to reach maturity? Anything that needs immediate results is probably not going to be worth growing. Fast-growing trees and shrubs tend to be non-native and create more problems than they're worth. Have you got deer? The Rutgers deer-resistant plant list doesn't tell you plants that deer will avoid completely, but it rates plants as far as how susceptible they are to deer damage. Plant Nova Natives also has a good list of deer resistant plants, but they are just deer resistant. They're not going to be deer proof. This is a social media page called Trees from Seeds. It's a gentleman, an older gentleman who's a retired forester, and I think he has a lot of wisdom to share on planting trees and shrubs, but particularly reforesting and planting from seed. But these are 2 suggestions for a more natural deer guard that you might put around, especially new trees and shrubs that you can use existing branches. We have a lot of branches down from our storm damage this year, and you could put those to use for creating sort of a natural landscape. You probably wouldn't want this in a formal garden, but some of you may be more artful basket weavers than others, but it's just a thought. So why am I suggesting natives? Generally, they're adapted to conditions. They're easier to grow and maintain. The right tree or shrub boosts property values, and more people are becoming aware of the benefits of native plants, and that can in turn attract the right buyer to your home. The right tree or shrub provides shade and year-round beauty, and native trees provide that equally. Trees cool the environment. They provide fruits and shelter for birds and other wildlife. And a mature tree can absorb about 40 pounds of carbon dioxide per year. Native Virginia trees and shrubs support an astonishing number of Virginia native insects and wildlife, particularly caterpillars, that are critical for baby songbirds to have in their food as a food source. In this presentation, Northern Virginia natives are marked with 2 stars, and the rest are native to the East Coast or to Virginia. PlantNovaNatives.org has a tree campaign. They also have a great website for looking more in depth about what tree might or shrub might be right for your property. So native versus native. Many native plants have been hybridized to either enhance or change some feature. They might be more disease resistant. It might change the leaf color, the flower shape, and its effect, that genetic change and its effect on wildlife or pollinators is not always predictable. Mount Cuba, Penn State, University of Vermont have all done some research, and other institutions are starting to research the effect of cultivars, which a native plant that is a cultivar is sometimes called a nativar. The plants may not be fertile, though, and it can limit the genetic diversity. It may not be as attractive to wildlife. Different color flowers, caterpillars won't recognize or eat a leaf of a different color on some nativars. So it's wise to be aware of this. You don't need to know all the research. It's still emerging, but you can contact the help desk, Master Gardener at pwcgov.org, and we can help you steer you in the right direction and maybe make a wise choice on which tree or shrub might be right for your property. So a high quality tree has to be chosen carefully. If it's indeed a regular tree that just has a single trunk, it should just have that single trunk and not multiple trunks. The trunk should be free of wounds, and that flare at the bottom, that wide part, should be obvious and above the soil line. Healthy roots should be white. They should smell fine. They should smell rotten. You can take a look at the root ball. That trunk flare should be above the soil line, but on many container plants that you find at nurseries, it's not, because they've been repotted multiple times. So sometimes that will be buried, and you'll have to correct for that when you plant the tree and make sure it gets above the soil line. A low quality tree has circling roots in the pot. It might have been in the pot too long. Unless it's a multi-stemmed tree, you should look for a single leader. Avoid any tree with wounds. If there's weeds covering the pot, that just shows it hasn't been well taken care of. Look for crossing branches or included bark, and that crossing branches are not necessarily a veto for that tree. They can be easily pruned off on a young tree. But some trees and shrubs are naturally multi-stemmed. Here's a list of a few native trees that have multi-stems, and so that's normal for those. But some trees need a central leader. Here's a Virginia Tech publication on ways to kill a tree. Not that we're advocating any of these things, but these are things to avoid doing if you want to maintain your investment. Trees are expensive. So how to plant a tree. You're going to dig a wide planting hole 2 or 3 times the width of the root ball. Wide, shallow holes encourage horizontal root growth, and that's necessary for healthy tree growth. You only want to backfill the hole with existing unamended soil, no organic matter, no peat moss, no compost in the planting hole. Because what happens is if there's a mismatch between the 2 different types of soil, water will create a perched water table at the bottom of that hole. And the difference in the pore sizes creates problems with water movement. So just unamended soil in the soil hole, and that root ball should have plenty of room to expand, and that remember that a root flare should be above that soil line. So you're going to remove wire, burlap, cut circling roots, and spread those roots out in that planting hole. Commercial landscapers will sometimes insist that it's okay to leave the burlap or wires on, but it's not. The tree will not, that burlap will not degrade, and the tree's root growth will be inhibited. So mulching, mulch out to the drip line if you can, and make sure that root flare is above the soil line and it's not covered with mulch, about 2 to 4 inches deep. Incorrect mulching should not go up the tree trunk or touch the tree trunk at the bottom. It should not be a volcano. So trees and turf don't go together. The turf will win. There are many more root hairs that can inhibit the growth of the tree roots. And so, and there's some allelopathy that occurs, a chemical reaction that creates a problem for the tree roots, and they won't go and extend themselves out in an area filled with turf. So mulch out properly away from the tree trunk, or else the turf will win. Don't mulch deeply. Here's some vole damage where the arrow is. So, and this poor tree has to compete with turf in this area. Bark gets excessively wet and the tree roots grow up in the mulch if you mulch wrong. It reduces the oxygen levels around the roots too. So you can consider using arborist wood chips for mulch. Oftentimes you can get a free load, but it's a large load. So keep that in mind if this is an option that you like. I have a pile in my driveway about as tall as I am. And then I'm using to mulch to my drip line on trees and also create paths in my yard. You can read more about this at Garden Professor's Wonderful Wood Chips article. You can get chip drop by signing up online, and arborists, instead of dumping it at the landfill, they have to pay to dump it at the landfill. And alternately, they could dump it in your front yard. But remember, count the cost because it's a lot of wood chips. So irrigating new trees and shrubs, newly planted trees and shrubs they need regular, consistent watering. And we don't have adequate rainfall in the summer months or even some springs. So the root systems, no matter how they are contained, are severely reduced or restricted when they're in the pot. So once you spread those roots out, the root system will grow and establish, especially if you provided adequate water. So watering establishes that root system. So the first 2 weeks after planting, you might try watering deeply a couple times every day for a while. And then at 3 to 12 weeks, every 2 to 3 days. And after 12 weeks, until the roots are established, once a week probably, and 1 to 5 gallons per inch of the tree width. As those roots grow and spread, irrigation volume will need to be increased. Check the appearance of the plant. So hand watering is preferred over Gator Bags. Gator Bags hold about 14 to 15 gallons, and they release in a slow trickle. Many times I'll see Gator Bags that are put on a tree or shrub, and they're empty, and that creates a moist environment that's voles-like, and they can damage the tree trunk, and it also creates a moist environment for fungal diseases to occur, especially in that root collar area. So if you have to put a Gator Bag on, maybe you're going on vacation, or you can't get to it as often as you'd like, make sure it has water in it and then take it off as soon as you don't need it anymore. A well-established tree does not grow down, it grows out, and often the roots will extend 4 to 5 times the diameter of that drip line. So avoid construction in this area. Make sure you're mulching as much as you can, as much as it's practical. And remember that the tree roots are growing out, not down. So remember, just a few takeaways. Trees and turf don't coexist because the turf will win. Fertilize only based on a soil test. So if you see the tree has symptoms and you suspect a nutrient problem, do a soil test. Don't guess at what's wrong. You can consult our office, certainly, or a licensed arborist for diagnostics. Treesaregood.org is the arborist site, and they can do a home visit. You can also send photos and samples for the Extension Horticulture Help Desk. It's good to make an appointment. mastergardener@pwcgov.org is how you reach us. Choose natives. Meet the cultural needs of the plant. Choose the right plant for the right place, mulch it right, and you'll have a lot fewer problems. And your investment will be protected. So we're going to talk about varieties of trees and shrubs. Small trees can be considered to be under 30 feet. And they're better for a suburban landscape. Many are understory, so may have some shade tolerance. But there's a few plants that can consider to be shrubs. So they're really perennials, but they act more like a shrub. So in the background, in the foreground here, you see this is Thomas Rainier's design. You see Amzonia in the front and Baptisia in the back. Not the pink, the two purples, and they can be considered, they act like a shrub. They become woody over time, but they really are a perennial. So here's Amzonia again, and this is a straight species here. It's not a cultivar. It has light blue flowers in the spring, and then it has a nice autumn color, so it acts like a shrub. Baptisia or Australis or wild blue indigo. This is a picture from Mount Cuba Center in Delaware. And it's a perennial that can act like a shrub. It has a beautiful purple flowers, nice foliage, and then real interesting seed pods in the fall. Here's a small tree. Remember, if there's two stars by these are Northern Virginia natives. The Eastern Redbud is a beautiful tree, multi-stemmed, has that cauliflowery where it gets the flowers on the trunk, nice yellow fall color, and those leaves are thin enough that leaf cutter bees, which are important pollinators, can take little bits of the leaf to make their cocoons. Fringe tree is a beautiful native Northern Virginia tree, Chionanthus virginicus, about 15 to 25 feet, full sun. It's not tolerant of drought. It's a good nectar source for pollinators. It is in the same genus as ash, and so there has been some damage by emerald ash borer, but we don't see that as often as with ash. And I know many clients that have grown them successfully. Serviceberry has delicious berries if you can get to them before the birds do. Really pretty fall color. A nice multi-stem shrub. The Amelanchier canadensis is the one that's native to Northern Virginia. Really nice tree. A sweet bay magnolia is an evergreen. Fragrant blooms 10 to 35 feet. Slow growing, but prefers to have soil that's not dry, medium to wet soils. Pawpaw is a fruit-bearing tree, delicious, takes many years to produce that fruit, 5 or more years. So 15 to 25 feet, fold apart sun, prefers moist sites and some shade. It's really kind of an understory peeking out from the edge of a wooded area. Silky Dogwoods, about 5 to 8 feet, so it's a smaller shrub, has beautiful blueberries that birds like, nice dark green foliage, good fall color. Flowering dogwood, our state tree, Cornus Florida, is a Northern Virginia native. It does better in part sun with richer soils on the edge of a wooded area. Songbirds like the berries. If you plant it in full sun, it will be more prone to some diseases. So I would recommend making sure that it gets in the right area. So gray dogwood, Cornus racemosa, beautiful white berries and those stems of red that persist after the berries are gone. White flowers in the spring. American holly, we're talking a little bit bigger tree here, 15 to 30 feet tall. In the suburban landscape, 50 feet tall in natural areas, full sun to part shade. Soil needs to be well drained, and you need male and female trees for the berries to develop. Devil's walking stick. Now this may not be so attractive to you, but it has really interesting flowers, beautiful leaf arrangements, deer resistant because, I mean, who's going to eat that? It likes the forest edge. It's very spiny when young and the animals can reach it, but then as it grows, it loses some of its prickliness. Oops. Eastern red cedar. Juniper virginiana, not a small tree, but it's manageable and grows fairly slow. Deer nibbles at it, but usually they don't eat the whole thing. Prefers full sun and grows in some really, really challenging conditions. It's great cover for birds in the winter. So larger trees, make sure you have sufficient space for the root zone and mature size. The critical root zone extends at least as far as the limbs and often 2 to 3 times further. Trees are the healthiest when this area is not disturbed. So here's some other trees. These are larger trees here, but look at the caterpillar. And remember, caterpillars aren't a pest. They're a food source for our important songbirds. And look at all the varieties. A white oak will be a host plant for 436 different kinds of caterpillar species. So these are some native larger trees that for your consideration. And I would recommend to you the book, The Nature of Oaks, written by Doug Tallamy. Oaks support more life forms and provide food and protection for birds and bears and countless insects and spiders, an enormous diversity of species. So there's a lot of different oaks, and we can help you make a choice for that because different ones could prefer different conditions. Maples, they're starting to bloom right now. They're an early nectar source for pollinators, good nesting habitat. Acer rubrum has, of course, beautiful fall color. The spring, these flowers appear early in the spring, but this is a large tree. So river birch, Baptisia nigra, very large tree, often put in a insufficient space, 40 to 70 feet tall. So count the cost. Has a really nice exfoliating bark that gives winter interest. And it hosts 411 species of moths and butterflies, including the morning cloak, Io, Luna, Polyphemus, and the Sarcopia. So an important tree for pollinators and wildlife. Bitternut hickory, great fall color, and the nuts and the seeds support songbirds. This is a large tree though, so make sure that you have enough space. Here's a crab apple. It does lose its fruit on the ground, but bumblebees, waxwings, robins, grosbeaks, mockingbirds, and foxes enjoy that fruit. It has a really nice spring bloom too. So native cherry, the Prunus serratina, we're not talking about the ornamental cherries at the tidal basin. This is the native cherry. It's a large tree. It's a really important nectar and pollen source for native pollinators and bees. And the fruits are a favorite. It hosts 450 butterfly species and moth species. So it's a really important wildlife tree to consider if you have enough space. So avoid planting these broadfruit pear. There are many other invasives that we would recommend you not plant. You can find other invasives at the Department of Conservation and Recreation website, their invasive species list, but these are just some that are invasive. They escape into natural areas and keep other native species from thriving. So shrubs, let's talk about a few of those. They can be anything from ground cover like a juniper to near tree size, and some are single trees, some are multi-stemmed. Spice bush is a great understory tree. It hosts the cutest caterpillar ever. Spice bush swallowtail has really interesting yellow flowers that appear on bare branches, and then the berries are the red berries. It's got fragrant leaves. Really a cool tree for understory, multi-stemmed. Tia virginica. There are some shorter cultivars that seem to be appropriate for a wildlife. Really neat fall color, fragrant, uh, and likes medium to wet soil, so make sure that you can provide that. This is a Northern Virginia native. Summer sweet or clethra. This is a wetland plant. And I see people putting it in more dry conditions and it just doesn't do very well there. It's only about 3 to 8 feet tall, fragrant, likes full sun, but wet soils. Northern Virginia native, Clethra onifolia. The red dogwood, Cornus Florida, likes full sun or part shade, and dry to wet conditions, so it's pretty adaptable. It's pretty fast growing. And of course, in the winter, it has those red stems that are lovely. And spring flower, late spring, some early summer flowering with white blooms. Fothergilla is a really interesting tree with good fall color. It's fragrant blooms that look more like a bottle brush. It likes acidic soil, full sun to part shade. False indigo, Amorpha fruticosa. It's a good substitute for invasive butterfly bush. And if you like that kind of shape and the flowers, very interesting. It's not fragrant. It has a very odd smell, but I think the blooms make up for it. They're usually covered with bumblebees in my yard. And it's smaller. It's 4 to 12 feet tall. Button bush, this is another one that likes wet condition, but it's a Northern Virginia native. It's a great pollinator plant. And I hope it won't be called the coronavirus shrub, but it does sort of look like that star-shaped bloom. It's just really beautiful, but it is a wetland plant, or likes wet, moist conditions in alkaline areas. The alder, this is great for stream banks, along a lake. Requires enough sufficient spacing, has interesting cones, and it likes that moist soil right up on the edge of a body of water. Carolina rose, this is our native rose. It's Northern Virginia native. It will grow in partial shade, but it does flower better in full sun. Native roses are semi-aggressive, so for small properties, it may not be their best choice. Beautyberry. There's a lot of non-native beautyberries out there, but this is our Calico Americana, the native blue beautyberry. It can be completely cut back every year. Has those purple berries that are persistent all winter. Full sun to part shade, about 4 to 8 feet tall, but you can cut it back every year. It likes it. It does tolerate a little bit of shade, but it prefers sun. New Jersey tea. This is a nice small shrub for like a suburban lot or a townhouse. And it's fragrant, attracts bees and butterflies. This is a Northern Virginia native. Once established, it does really well, but it will need sufficient, sufficient water when it's establishing. Common 9-bark, Isocarpus, refers to the peeling bark. It has that really fragrant spring bloom. It's in the rose family, prefers acidic soils. St. Johnswort, this is a Northern Virginia native. It's a Hypericum. It's deer and rabbit resistant. That doesn't mean they won't nibble on it and try it, but it's a great host plant for caterpillars and attractive to bees. You can prune it early in the spring to keep it the size you want. It's only like 1 to 5 feet tall. It is deciduous. This is a great tree or shrub, and it could benefit from one of those twig structures around it to keep the deer from eating it. It's an understory tree, full sun to deep shade. It's mainly found in the wooded areas, but look at that berry and bloom on that. It's just fascinating, but deer do like it. It is poisonous to sheep and cattle. A steeple bush. This is our native Spirea tomentosa. It's a small tree or shrub, 2 to 4 feet tall. It needs moist to wet soils, and I lost one this year because I didn't give it adequate. But this is a great choice instead of the non-native Spireas. Smooth hydrangea. This is our Northern Virginia native hydrangea. Arborescens, straight species is deer and rabbit resistant. It tolerates black walnut trees, 3 to 5 feet tall, needs a little bit of shade. So this is a great choice instead of maybe the mophead. Not that I don't love the mophead hydrangeas and the maple leaf, but this is the native for Northern Virginia. Oak leaf hydrangea, no, it's native to the southeast, full sun to part shade, 6 to 8 feet tall, good fall color, really interesting blooms, and those blooms persist all winter, and they look lovely with a little bit of snowfall on them. Winterberry holly, you need a male and a female to get the berries on this, but you only need one male for numerous females. And it provides winter berries for birds, and the flowers provide for pollinators in the spring. It's a really cool shrub. It's a deciduous holly. Ilex glabra, this does like wet conditions and acidic soils. It's got blueberries the birds like. It tends to be deer and rabbit resistant. I'm not gonna swear to that, but they will nibble occasionally. And Yapon holly, both this inkberry and the Yapon holly require male and female to produce berries, and they can be a good substitute for boxwoods in case you want more of a traditional look. And you can prune them so they look more like a boxwood too, or you can prune it to look like this tree here. Button bush, oh, we've already done that one. Black chokeberry, aronia. It has really nutritious berries, tolerates varied soil condition, good fall color. Red chokeberry, again, berry producer, can handle wet sites, suckers a lot, and has that cherry tree type flower, Northern Virginia native. There's so many viburnums, both native and non-native, that are available for a whole bunch of different conditions. So if you need a recommendation of that, you can look through Morton Arboretum has a really good site, Missouri Botanical Garden that's found online. But you can also ask us for a viburnum recommendation. Here's some of the viburnums, the black haw and the possum haw. And these are Northern Virginia, these first two are Northern Virginia natives, and they have really interesting berries, good for wildlife, good for birds, and medium to wet moisture needed though. There's some more viburnum species that aren't native to Northern Virginia that are native to the East Coast, Piedmont area, cranberry viburnum and arrowwood viburnum. So there's a wide variety for almost any condition. There's another viburnum, nannyberry, really beautiful shrub, wide, leave enough space for it. The northern bayberry is fragrant. This is what bayberry candles were made out of. Birds eat the seeds, and then the seeds are allowed to germinate after they pass through the intestinal system of the bird. It's a larval host for the banded hair streak and the polyphemus moth and the red banded hair streak, and it's tolerant of wet, dry conditions. It can be a really wonderful type of hedge plant because it can survive in poor soils. Elderberry, this is a fairly fast grower, self-pollinating. You can get better berry production if you have a couple different varieties though. It's greater than 8 feet tall. It can tolerate moist sites and dry sites. And it can tolerate black walnut and grow under that. It attracts birds and pollinators. The birds eat all of my berries off my elderberries. Low bush blueberry has beautiful blooms and great fall color. And these would be appropriate even in a container. Prefers acidic soils and produces, delicious blueberries if you can get to them before the birds do. I usually get plenty and the birds get plenty on my I have a high bush blueberry. Here's the high bush blueberry. I love the bell-shaped flowers and certainly the fruit. And then the fall color, it's a great landscape plant for fall color. Pinkster azaleas, this likes part shade. I would say on the edge of a sunny area, it would do okay. This is the native Azaria that's native to Northern Virginia. Hummingbirds and butterflies like it. It's a deciduous Azaria. Witch hazel, part full sun to part shade, and it blooms. The native witch hazel blooms in October through December with a strappy yellow flower. Attracts birds a late nectar source for the pollinators that stay around a little longer. Mountain laurel, this is a little tricky to grow. It needs moist soil and cool conditions, humusy, blooms in May. Difficult to get established, but in the right conditions, it's a Northern Virginia native that lends a lot of interest to a wooded area. So we can do this. By adding native trees and shrubs, we can restore biodiversity in our landscapes. It used to be that we just asked a tree or shrub to be pretty, but now they have to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, and manage our stormwater. So we are in Prince William County, as you know, and we go from the Potomac River to the Bull Run Mountain, and in between that area is the Piedmont, and then 80% of our county is in the Piedmont region. So you need to realize that there are two different conditions, that if you live in the past 95, on the other side of 95 in the eastern part of the county, that is considered a different ecosystem, and that's more coastal. But 80% of the county is included in the Piedmont region. So it's divided by that fall line, two physiographic regions. So when you're selecting a plant, it might be important to know that we have two different areas of the county. So here's a couple, if you're considering reforestation or adding trees to an already forested area, look and see what plants are already growing there to see what plant community, and make sure you're adding something that's in that same plant community. The floodplain area likes box elder, hackberry, black walnut, spicebush. That's where my property tends to be. But in other parts of the county, you have more of so you might not have this on your property, but you can look for a nearby reference area. If you're near Prince William Forest, you can look, that's an acidic oak hickory forest. Or if you're, in the western part of the county or mid-county, that's more of a Piedmont floodplain, or a mesic forest. That tends to be fertile and beech hickory. And so knowing what's already growing there or in a reference area close to your home can help you make a better decision about what plant community might support what you want to put in. So here's some resources and credits. I want to thank Master Gardener Volunteer Linda Goulden for her contributions to this presentation. And many of the pictures are from the Missouri Botanical Garden, and that has a lot of good information on the mature size, width, and the height of trees and shrubs. So I would recommend that to you. There's also a native plants for wildlife habitat from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife that's available online. Many of the photos were used with permission from Thomas Rainier and Stark Brothers, Mount Cuba Center, Virginia Tech Publications. So check out those additional sources, and please consult our Extension Horticulture Help Desk if you have questions. Well, we have other presentations posted on our YouTube, so make sure that you check these out, and this presentation will be posted there shortly also. So you can sign up for our classes that are coming in the future by email. So let us know if you have suggestions for other classes also.